and welcomes. For about 7 years, Singapore has been the biggest investor to Indonesia. Last year, the value of its direct investment to Indonesia was around 9.8 billion US dollar, a 35% increase from the year before, albeit the COVID-19 pandemic. Even this year, Singapore is still the highest. The trade value between the two neighboring countries is also quite significant. The COVID-19 pandemic has not become a burden or obstacle to the cooperation of Singapore and Indonesia. Cooperation in other sectors is also still running well. The two countries also work together in handling the pandemic and its impact. Singapore is one of the countries that assisted Indonesia during the peak of COVID-19 crisis a couple of months ago. I am Purwani Dia Prabandari, and this is Tempo Talks. It's Tempo News program consisting a series of conversations with ambassadors, government officials, and other figures who are involved in diplomacy or cooperation activities among countries, especially involving Indonesia. Our guest today is someone who has made huge efforts to make the relationship between Singapore and Indonesia strong, like I have explained before. He is a diplomat who has lived in Indonesia for more than 9 years in a row. It's quite remarkable. Even before that, on his first posting abroad as a diplomat, he was posted in Indonesia for about 5 years. Please welcome the Ambassador of the Republic of Singapore, Mr. Anil Kumar Nayar. Anil, it's an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you very much. It's my honor to be interviewed by you and for our friends in Tempo. A very nice morning to you, Ibu Purwani, and all friends at Tempo. And thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. You know, as COVID-19 pandemic hits the whole world and makes people limit the activities, does it make you have to work harder right now?
Well, I think work will always be there. Work will always be changing and challenging as we go forward. But I don't think no country in the world can say, or any country in the world can say that it was prepared for a pandemic of this scale. And certainly for my colleagues and I in Jakarta as well, we have had to make so many adjustments and changes in the way we work. But it is what it is. And I think so far we have done our best to cope and to also carry out our duties and responsibilities well, of course, with the help of all our good friends and partners here in Indonesia.
Yeah. Is there any change for Singapore? I mean, it's like the pandemic has changed the world, as you say. All countries have to adapt, including Singapore and Indonesia, of course. So how is Singapore? Is there any change of priorities?
Well, if you take COVID-19 alone, looking at the situation in Singapore, it is currently indeed very challenging. We have had 2 days in a row of more than 1,000 cases. We have people now in the intensive care unit. And also we are bracing ourselves for the situation to become even more challenging in the coming weeks before we see any improvement. Having said that, we are also in a relatively better position. We are better prepared to cope with this situation than we were, for example, last year. The difference is that, first of all, we have vaccinations with more than 80% of residents and Singaporeans having been vaccinated, fully vaccinated. We also find that thanks to vaccinations and the various health protocols in place, we have been able to ensure that although we have a large number of people who are unfortunately infected, more than 98% are asymptomatic or have mild symptoms, with less than 0.2% of the people who have been infected, unfortunately, going to the ICU. So our priorities from last year to the present have not changed insofar as it is about keeping people safe, keeping people healthy, protecting the vulnerable, and also to keep the death rate to as low a level as possible. But we are now in a situation where we are moving into what we describe as being a COVID-19 resilient nation. Now, COVID-19 resilient nation is not to be confused with saying that we will have zero infection, no infections, no problems. No. We expect that COVID-19 will be with us for quite some time to come. And therefore, we do not want to allow COVID-19 to disrupt and create problems in our society. On the contrary, we will learn to adapt to COVID-19 and at the same time continue to move forward as a society and as a country. So this is what we are working towards.
Yeah, the impact of COVID pandemic is really, really bad, right? So life must go on, right? And then it's like, beside about the health policy or program, so is there any change in other priorities? It's like an economy or education, something like that.
I think what we have seen is that COVID-19 has been a very tough and unforgiving teacher for many of us. This is the challenge of our generation in many ways. So it is very important from Singapore's perspective to take the right lessons from this very unforgiving teacher. There is no room for complacency. There is no room to congratulate ourselves when the numbers go down and tell ourselves that everything will be okay. And certainly there is no room for self-pity. This is the situation that we are faced with. And our priorities as a country to stay united, to stay cohesive in facing this challenge together, and to make sure that Singapore continues to make progress, whether it's in terms of trends and developments that are out there, digitalization, and in terms of Singapore's development as an economy, we have to continue to make progress even as there's COVID-19 in our midst. So taking care of our people, providing support and protection for the vulnerable, creating good jobs for Singaporeans and the people who are in Singapore, making sure that Singapore stays relevant to the global economy, and also to forge and strengthen existing partnerships with friends and partners such as Indonesia. These will continue to be our priorities even as we manage the effects and pressures that come with COVID-19.
Yeah, as you said, that pandemic underlines how important international or global cooperation is. How do Singapore and Indonesia support each other to cope with all the problems during the pandemic?
I think we have been working very closely during this period. You would recall that last year when the effects of COVID-19 start to be felt, Singapore provided support, whether it's in terms of PPEs, whether it's in terms of masks, sanitizers. Also, this year, when we were in a different phase of the COVID-19 challenge, Singapore also provided oxygen, among other things. Now, we did so not because we felt that we were in a much better position than other countries. We did so because in this situation that we all face together, there is no other way but to cooperate and to help one another and to support one another to see through this challenging period. I think this has been our approach. Even as Singapore itself, obviously, is continuing to manage our own situation, our own internal situation related to COVID-19. I'm happy to say that the cooperation between Singapore and Indonesia, not just on COVID-19 front, but also in terms of our economic activities, investments, trade, terrorism, anti-terrorism cooperation, security cooperation, and even in education, cooperation has carried on. And as you outlined in your opening remarks, Ibu, despite the fact that we have COVID-19, we are in the midst of COVID-19, investments from Singapore to Indonesia have actually increased last year compared to 2019. So I think this shows that cooperation and the partnership that exists between Singapore and Indonesia are clearly going from strength to strength.
Okay, so there is no change, probably even a stronger relationship, right?
I think the change for us, as far as Singapore is concerned, is to step back a bit and to look at this situation to see that a lot of things that we have taken for granted, perhaps we will need to look at that even closer. For example, connectivity between Singapore and Indonesia was taken as a given. I had Indonesian friends who could visit Singapore in the morning and come back to Indonesia in the evening. And likewise, from Singapore to Indonesia, tourism flows were very strong between our two countries. But COVID-19 obviously and unfortunately has had a very negative effect on this connectivity. Going forward, the challenge for us would be to see how we can restore, and not just restore, but to enhance the connectivity and the tourism flows that exist between our two countries. And I think I'm happy to report that our two governments are already looking at some of these issues very closely and at these areas very closely, and we expect good progress to be made in the coming months.
Pada saat ini dan akan datang, korporasi sangat membutuhkan SDM yang mampu beradaptasi dengan dunia bisnis yang serba digital termasuk kegiatan pemasaran. Untuk itu, kami hadir dengan membuka program studi manajemen pemasaran internasional yang akan dikuatkan dengan pembelajaran local culture di banyak negara. Kurikulum dirancang dinamis mengikuti perkembangan dunia kerja dan dunia usaha yang bergerak begitu cepat. Tempo Media Group sebagai penyelenggara pendidikan berpengalaman di industri media dengan reputasi tinggi selama lebih dari 50 tahun. Para pengajar dari kalangan praktisi akan mendidik mahasiswa program studi manajemen pemasaran internasional untuk siap bekerja di dunia profesional. Kurikulum Politeknik Tempo berbasis keahlian terapan dengan muatan 60% praktik yang didukung fasilitas Smart Campus dengan digitalisasi sistem belajar. Mahasiswa berkesempatan praktek kerja langsung di lebih dari 20 perusahaan di lingkungan Tempo Media Group dan Mitra Politeknik Tempo. Lulusan sarjana terapan manajemen disiapkan untuk berprofesi menjadi marketing planner, digital marketer, konsultan pemasaran, customer relation management, dan juga entrepreneur yang berorientasi pasar global. Raih masa depan cerah bersama Politeknik Tempo dengan belajar di program studi manajemen pemasaran internasional. Jadilah profesional marketer baru di era digital. Mari menjadi bagian dari keluarga besar Empower yang kreatif, mandiri, dan siap kerja.
Singapore has been the biggest investor, as you said. It's also, I already said before, in Indonesia. Are you satisfied with it? I mean, it's like, do you think it still can be optimized?
Ibu, if I say that I'm satisfied with the state of our relationship or in terms of our investments, then I will be doing a very big disfavor to Singaporeans and Indonesians. No, I am not satisfied. I think there's a lot more that we can do together. But I also want to highlight that the relationship is not about just numbers and rankings.
Right.
Our relationship with Indonesia is long-standing and deep-rooted. It is not just about Singapore businesses coming in, making money in Indonesia, and then taking the money out, and then we feel happy that everything is going well. We want to create more opportunities for Singaporeans and Indonesians to work closely together. We want to create opportunities here in Indonesia for our companies, of course, but we also want to create opportunities for good quality jobs for Indonesians, whether it's in Batam, Bintan Karimun, where Singapore has substantial investments, whether it's in the Kendal Industrial Park in Central Java, where in recent years we have a significant economic presence. We want to create good jobs of good quality, and for our investments and economic engagement with Indonesia to be sustainable. Now, these things go well beyond whether we are number one investor or the numerical value in terms of investments. Well, so we take a very long-term perspective in our relationship.
Is there any formal requirement that the relationship, the cooperation, or the investment from Singapore to Indonesia, or the relationship or cooperation between the two countries give the benefit to the people? It's formal requirement, if there is.
I think it's not a question of whether there is a formal requirement or not. Clearly, we are not interested in short-term, quick profit types of businesses where we can come in, make a fast buck and pull out. I think our businesses are not interested in those activities. What we want to do, for example, our two countries are working very closely together in the IT sector, because we see obviously the future going forward will be very much driven by IT and digital economy and technology. So this is a new area where our two countries are doing more together. In existing areas such as manufacturing, we have already a significant presence, but we are looking to ramp up in other ways to bring in more Singapore SMEs and companies to find that synergy with our Indonesian partners. So these things are also going on, the old and the new.
Okay. The ministerial meeting between Singapore and Indonesia last October set 6 groups of bilateral economic cooperation, right? Namely, Batam, Bintan, Karimun, and other special economic zones, investment, manpower, transportation, agribusiness, and tourism, right? Why are those sectors chosen?
I think these are areas where we found that there was very good opportunity and scope for synergy between Indonesia and Singapore over the years. So the relationships were organically developing in these areas in a mutual beneficial way. And I think the two governments then decided to give that relationship some structure by creating the various working groups so that we would be able to, in addition to allowing it to develop organically, take stock of what was going on in each sector and to see, okay, perhaps some guidance, some support could be given for further development in those areas. But we are not pigeonholing the relationship in terms of cooperation only in those 6 working groups. As I mentioned, we are also looking ahead to see what more can we do, whether it's the digital economy, whether it's agri-food, whether it's renewable energy, even in areas like infrastructure development, where Singapore has not been that big a player or partner for Indonesia. We are looking at what more we can do. Of course, tourism is an area where the potential has been significant. There has been good growth and development. Unfortunately, this has been somewhat stalled thanks to COVID-19. But rest assured, we are looking very, very closely at how we can revive this sector again as our two countries find our way through COVID-19.
Right. When do you think that tourism will arise again?
Well, unfortunately, what COVID-19 has also shown us is not to set ourselves any timetables, which many of which have proven to be unraveled quite easily. So there is no date where I can say from this date, everything will be back to normal. But clearly, you would have seen in the media reports that Singapore is reopening our airport to more inbound traffic, transit flights, including transit to and from Indonesia as well. So we see this as a step-by-step progression to opening connectivity between our two countries again in a very incremental, safe, and cautious way. As opposed to try and do something quickly and then find that we have to pull back later. I think that would be counterproductive.
Right. But how's the development of all this cooperation so far?
Well, we are pleased with the progress so far, all considered. I mean, the overall investment numbers are also very encouraging. But as I said, we are not in the business of congratulating ourselves and thinking that we can just let it develop on its own. I think on the Indonesian side, we have been very happy to work with Pak Menko Airlangga, as well as his team of economic ministers in the various sectors who have all been on the same page as instructed by Bapak President Jokowi, that the economic relationship with key partners has to continue and has to grow during this period. I think we are all committed to ensuring that mutually beneficial goal.
Does the pandemic inspire to set up new initiative for better cooperation between Singapore or Indonesia, or even in a bigger arena such as the Asian or other international level?
I think COVID-19 has, as I mentioned, told us not to take things for granted. And the good news is that the two countries and the businesses and the governments on both sides did not fall into a state of despair and say, okay, we can't do anything because there's COVID-19. No, connectivity was affected. Then we found a way to continue to communicate and meet each other virtually, as we are doing now. And there have even been visits by, for example, Indonesian ministers to Singapore, as well as visits by Singapore political office holders and the business community to Indonesia. So we have found ways to work around the restrictions and problems created by COVID-19. Technology has been a real lifesaver in enabling us to maintain this relationship and in enabling us to increase our level of investments here in Indonesia. So we will continue to find new and innovative ways around some of these challenges.
What do you think is about the obstacles or the difficulties in the relationship or in the cooperation between Singapore and Indonesia so far?
I would not characterize the situation of one where there are obstacles or difficulties, but what I would emphasize is the importance for our two countries to continue to build on our understanding of one another, especially at the people-to-people level, and especially between the younger generation of Indonesians and younger generations of Singaporeans. I think a lot of success that we have today in our relationship is due to the fact that there have been very strong and enduring personal relationships, not just between the political office holders and not just between the business communities, but also at the people-to-people level. I'm always very happy and heartened when I was in Singapore to see so many Indonesian friends walking around in Orchard Road, talking to each other in Bahasa, enjoying Singapore on a weekend or during their holidays. It was very heartening. And likewise, I was also very happy to see that we have many Singaporean friends coming over to also see what's here in Indonesia and to make friends here. So the people-to-people relationship is very important. The danger is that we take this for granted. We think that it will always be like this, and we do not invest in an effort to develop that people-to-people relationship, especially at the level of the younger people. So this is an area where I think perhaps we hope to invest more effort, time, and energy in developing relationships. Hopefully, when the COVID situation starts to improve, we will be able to do even more than we are doing at present.
Yeah, I know that people-to-people relationship is really important to increase the relationship between the two countries. How do you make like an effort to promote the people-to-people relationship so far?
I think one area where Singapore has been doing quite a bit is in the area of education. We have a large number of young, talented, hardworking Indonesian students who are studying in Singapore in our schools. This is something that we want to continue to build on because they, in the end, will be far more effective ambassadors than I am in terms of strengthening the relationship between our two countries. When they come back to Indonesia, they start working here, they will be able to share their experiences and the benefits that they derived from their time in Singapore with others in Indonesia. So focusing on education as an area where our two countries can do a lot more together is very important. Likewise, we also hope to send more Singaporeans to do internships and to work where possible in Indonesia, at least in terms of getting the experience and making friends here. So these are areas where we hope to do a lot more in the coming years.
So Singapore offers quite a lot of fellowship for our funding assistance for the education for Indonesia, right?
So for many years, we have been doing what is called ASEAN Scholarship for friends from ASEAN countries. I'm happy to say that the take-up rate from Indonesia has been very good. This is from what you would say high school here, and it can go all the way to their university education. We also have many Indonesian students who are studying in our universities and other institutions of higher learning. And I think I see all of this as a positive.
Pada saat ini dan akan datang, korporasi sangat membutuhkan SDM yang mampu beradaptasi dengan dunia bisnis yang serba digital termasuk kegiatan pemasaran. Untuk itu, kami hadir dengan membuka program studi manajemen pemasaran internasional yang akan dikuatkan dengan pembelajaran local culture di banyak negara. Kurikulum dirancang dinamis mengikuti perkembangan dunia kerja dan dunia usaha yang bergerak begitu cepat. Tempo Media Group sebagai penyelenggara pendidikan berpengalaman di industri media dengan reputasi tinggi selama lebih dari 50 tahun. Para pengajar dari kalangan praktisi akan mendidik mahasiswa program studi manajemen pemasaran internasional untuk siap bekerja di dunia profesional. Kurikulum Politeknik Tempo berbasis keahlian terapan dengan muatan 60% praktik yang didukung fasilitas Smart Campus dengan digitalisasi sistem belajar. Mahasiswa berkesempatan praktek kerja langsung di lebih dari 20 perusahaan di lingkungan Tempo Media Group dan Mitra Politeknik Tempo. Lulusan sarjana terapan manajemen disiapkan untuk berprofesi menjadi marketing planner, digital marketer, konsultan pemasaran, customer relation management, dan juga entrepreneur yang berorientasi pasar global. Raih masa depan cerah bersama Politeknik Tempo dengan belajar di program studi manajemen pemasaran internasional. Jadilah profesional marketer baru di era digital. Mari menjadi bagian dari keluarga besar Tempower yang kreatif, mandiri, dan siap kerja.
Assigned as ambassador to Indonesia for almost 10 years, right? Even before that, you have been here for another 5 years. So, if you heard the word of Indonesia, what comes first in your mind?
I think for me, the most enduring sentiment from both my time or periods in Indonesia is the friendships that I made with the people here. The most significant impression on me uh, from my time in Indonesia has been the people that I've met, both in my first assignment here many years ago,
Yeah.
as well as in these 9 years. Indonesians, in my experience, are very warm, generous, and friendly people. And they're always very interested to learn more about foreign friends who are here in Indonesia. And this has enabled me to develop very good personal relationships, regardless of which segment of society they are from. From my teachers who work very hard to develop my Bahasa Indonesia language skills many years ago, to friends in the media, even political office holders, government officials, and so on. They always have time for me to engage my questions and to have good conversations with me, whether on WhatsApp or in person. So my lingering and a strong impression of Indonesia, which I will carry with me for the rest of my life, will be the friendships that I built with the people here in Indonesia.
Do you also meet or chat with the ordinary people in the street, probably, or going to warung?
Well, I've not had the opportunity to do much of all of that in the COVID situation over the last year and a half. But for sure, I always enjoy my conversations with Indonesians from all walks of life because they open a new insight, or they provide a new insight for me into looking at many things here, and not just politics or business and so on, but life in general. I think this has been very interesting. I've always cautioned myself not to assume that Jakarta is Indonesia. Jakarta is, of course, a very important capital city of Indonesia. It's also very important on the economic front, and it is situated in the equally important island of Java. But having said all that, we should not fall into the trap of assuming that what we see and experience here in Jakarta is reflective or representative of Indonesia as a whole. So I have had the privilege of being able to travel across Indonesia for work and meet people who are from different social backgrounds, from different regions in Indonesia, and through that I have been able to learn more about Indonesia. So another thing for me from my time in Indonesia is that you never stop being a student here in learning more about Indonesia and updating your information and knowledge constantly. I think that has been very, very enriching for me on a personal level.
Yeah, you travel a lot, so you see many regions in Indonesia. Is there any like a specific city or area that is quite interesting for you?
This is a very tricky question, Boo. You'll get me into trouble if I pick one over the other. Every region is, of course, interesting and, as I said, stimulating intellectually when you go there. But some areas have left a big impression of me. Many years ago, I visited Papua. That was a very, very important visit for me in terms of opening my eyes to what situation is like in a different part of Indonesia outside Java. I also enjoyed my visit to Aceh very much. I've been able to visit Aceh on more than one occasion, again to see the difference in terms of what goes on there compared to what we are more used to here in Jakarta and Java. So I could go on. There are so many interesting regions in Indonesia, and they're all interesting in different ways.
Okay. You've been here for almost 15 years, totally. And what is the most challenging?
I think the most challenging thing for me, I would say professionally, is to constantly remind myself not to fall into a trap. The trap is to look at my experience and knowledge about Indonesia and assume that it is wisdom. The trap not to look at what I see and use what I had seen in the past to make certain assumptions or calculations. So experience and knowledge does not denote wisdom. And certainly, communication does not necessarily mean engagement. So these are things that I constantly remind myself, and I have to constantly relook at some of the assumptions that I have about Indonesia when I look at what is unfolding in front of me today. Fortunately, in facing this challenge, I'm helped by the fact that I have an excellent team of very dedicated, hardworking, and driven colleagues, both colleagues from Singapore as well as colleagues here who are working in the embassy from Indonesia. They have been able, through their own work, which they share with me, they have been able to help me to challenge and question some of these assumptions and to remind myself that the learning about Indonesia never stops.
Do you have a big team in Jakarta?
I think we have a pretty significant team. All in, I would say we have about 50, both colleagues from Singapore as well as colleagues from Indonesia. It's not the numbers that matter. I think I'm very thankful and very, very appreciative of the fact that they are really very dedicated and committed to also learn more about Indonesia and to contribute towards the strengthening of our bilateral relationship.
Being assigned in Jakarta, you must have a hectic daily schedule, right? I mean, it's like a lot of officials from Jakarta coming to Singapore, or a lot of Singapore officials coming to Jakarta. So how do you unwind?
Well, I would say that being a foreign service officer or being a diplomat or official from Singapore posted to Jakarta is not a job. It's a vocation. It's 24/7. We have to really apply ourselves constantly. There are no public holidays or holidays and so on. Having said that, I don't want to exaggerate our workload here. There are also moments where, as you put it, Ibu, you can unwind. For me personally, I think the two most important activities are, number one, reading, because I find reading things which outside of work helps me to relax, helps me to cast my mind in different directions about things which are not really related to the work that I have to do. The other thing is, of course, exercise. So unfortunately, with COVID-19, going to the gym and a lot of us sports activities are not possible. But fortunately, I've still been able to exercise on a daily basis. So that, in a way, keeps me physically healthy and not to put on too much weight during this COVID-19 period.
Right. If you have to end your assignment in Jakarta soon, as you've been here for more than 9 years, what do you want to do before leaving?
I want to leave with the satisfaction that I have done my best in terms of promoting and strengthening the people-to-people relationship, as I said, between our two countries. Because if the understanding between the people of Indonesia and the people of Singapore about one another is strong, if we understand each other well at the people-to-people level, this will make the work of the businesses and the governments far more easier. If the people in Indonesia and people in Singapore lack an understanding about each other, they're suspicious of each other, or they have negative stereotypes of one another, this will hold back the relationship from achieving its full potential. So what I really hope to achieve is expecting that even with COVID, we will be able to do a lot more in terms of the people-to-people relationship between our two countries, especially between the young people of Indonesia and the young people of Singapore, because they are the future.
So what's your plan? How you do it?
As I mentioned, I think we will see if we can create more opportunities for students and young people from Indonesia to visit Singapore once connectivity is restored, and also for younger Singaporeans to come over to Indonesia, do internships here, and also maybe even work here for a while. So I think that, in a way, provides the building blocks for strengthening the people-to-people relationship.
Do you have any memorable experience during your stay in Jakarta?
They are all memorable. As I said, they are all memorable. I have been here during both difficult moments as well as happy moments. Difficult moments where you have natural disasters here, from floods and other natural disasters that happen. But on those occasions, when I see the way in which the Indonesian people deal with those challenges, not to be feeling very sad or let down, but dealing with adversity, in a very confident way. That's something that I find very, very encouraging. The other memorable occasion that I can think of on a happier note is, of course, I was here during the Asian Games, and I saw how Indonesia really put on a very, very good show of itself to the world, and also was an excellent host in terms of having many delegations here, sporting delegations. So I think it was a massive success in terms of PR for Indonesia, and I was very happy to be part of the community here who enjoyed that success.
Okay, Mr. Anil, thank you. We really appreciate you coming on this program. I'm Prabandari. You can watch the next Temple Talks next month with another interesting topic and interesting guest. Good day.